The voice of sharing Durian ASEAN.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Good morning, this is Arlene and you're listening to Durian ASEAN. On our ASEAN Daily today, we bring you news from Southeast Asia. First stop, Myanmar. Be wary of fraud. Myanmar's Suu Kyi tells huge rally. Myanmar opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi warned thousands of supporters to be vigilant against election fraud a week before the country's landmark November elections. Tens of thousands streamed into the outdoor parade ground next to a Buddhist temple in an eastern district of Yangon, the first major National League for Democracy party rally in the heart of the commercial hub. It is the first nationwide polls in a quarter of a century to be contested by Suu Kyi's NLD party, potentially tipping the balance of power away from the military and its ruling party allies for the first time in generations. The people's strength is our strength as well. That was what being told by Aung San Suu Kyi, who is 70 years old this year. She told a sea of supporters in eastern Yangon, her first major rally in the commercial hub and by far the largest gathering yet of her National League for Democracy party. She also said that we do not need to work with dirty ways. We will act until we win the correct way. We all need to be fully vigilant. She told that in front of a crowd that gave a loud cheer and laughter. The run-up to the polls have been marred by allegations of dirty tricks and complaints over the pre-poll preparations and concerns that significant minority groups, especially Muslims and Rohingyas, are underrepresented or unrepresented at all and disenfranchised. From Myanmar, we move on to also another Myanmar news regarding on the Muslim there. Muslims with citizenship barred from Myanmar election and they are living in poverty. Thousands of Kaman ethnic Muslim who are citizens of Myanmar remain displaced in Rakhine State, unable to return to their homes or have their say in the country's November election. Kaman people are officially recognized by the Myanmar government as one of the 7 ethnic groups in the country and hold strong historic and cultural connections to these lands. Their ancestry stretches back several centuries and they are widely considered indigenous. They hold national identity cards. What should be a powerful symbol of citizenship in the country, yet they claim their rights have been slowly eroded in the aftermath of deadly riots in 2012. In previous elections, they could actually vote since 1974 and even in 1990 and 2010. This is expressed by one citizen of the Kaman ethnic group. Other camps have voters lists, but here there is none. So they are sending a letter to the president, but they are still waiting to hear back the response. In the meantime, the Kaman have no freedom of movement and are restricted to the displacement camps as the Rohingyas are to their village. Ever present around the population are police officers who oversee everyone entering and leaving the area and maintain strict order. What is the future of Muslim there? It is still unclear. From Myanmar, we move on to the Philippines. Aquino takes on Philippine pay revamp in final months. President Benigno Aquino is taking advantage of a strengthening budget to overhaul the salary of about 1.3 million government workers in his final month in the office, a move that could boost both civil service morale and the economy as the nation prepares for an election next year. The government will propose a bill that would raise the president's monthly pay to almost 400,000 pesos, or equivalent to 8,500 US dollar, from 120,000 pesos now. The exchange would put the wages at about 70% of the average salary of the top executive in private companies, up from 23%. This is according to the Budget Secretary Butch Abad. Compensation for state workers will rise to about 84% of the average market rate from the current 55%. Aquino's proposal could be seen as a move to bolster support for his party, which is putting forward former Interior Minister Ma Roxas as its presidential candidate in the May election. This is according to Sony Africa, Executive Director of Ebon Foundation, Inc. in Manila. She also said that the timing of the proposed salary increase, even if it's not immediately implemented, show that it is for purposes of politicking instead of real policy implementation. Jakarta limits free speech. While in Jakarta, the government Basuki he is well known as Ahok, have issued a gubernatorial regulation restricting free speech in public spaces. Demonstrations often cause traffic jams on main roads. This is what he grouched about. Ahok said that he understood that all people should have freedom to deliver their opinions, but argued that they were not entitled to infringe upon the rights of others. Article 5 and 6 of the regulation also state that protests should be conducted between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. and that the noise level of the sound system should exceed more than 60 decibels. And the regulation also stipulates that 5 representatives from the protesting group will be allowed to meet with government officials to deliver their demands. On the other hand, Ahok, who is notorious for his straightforwardness in front of the media, said he chose the particular venues outlined above because if people stage protests there, the demonstration would not harm traffic flows in the city. Well, seems like Jakarta is moving towards the step of Malaysia. Hopefully it's not for the worse. And talking about ASEAN as a whole, let's move on to climate change. So ASEAN ministers adopt statement on climate change. The 2015 ASEAN Joint Statement on Climate Change was adopted by participants of the 13th ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on Environment, which wrapped up yesterday in Hanoi. It was released yesterday at the press conference held by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, which hosted the meeting. ASEAN Secretary General Lee Luang Min said at the press conference that the joint statement outlines 17 sustainable development goals that were adopted at the United Nations Sustainable Development Summit on September 25th. Deputy Minister of Natural Resources and Environment Tran Hong Ha said that the joint statement was expected to be presented at the 21st Conference of Parties by Malaysia, the chair of ASEAN, after receiving the green light at the 27th ASEAN Summit. The joint statement reaffirmed previous statements by ASEAN on climate change and aligns with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Via the joint statement, ASEAN members express hopes that the UNFCCC will be made aware that ASEAN countries are suffering from climate change. And don't forget, his too. So from climate change, we move on to the economy. But before that, let's take one short music break. We'll be back after this.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back again. This is Arlene. Of course, you're listening to our ASEAN Daily. So Cambodia pins economic hopes on AEC. Seems like Cambodians are expecting a seamless transition when the ASEAN Economic Community is launched in another 2 months and hopefully heralds a second investment wave. They are hoping that the second wave of investment will be capable of transforming the country's pool of unskilled labor into a manufacturing hub. Sok Sipana, a senior government advisor, said that he thinks for Cambodia, the economy is already wide open. As a matter of fact, since they acceded to the WTO, they made a tremendous economic liberalization already. So, to him, the AEC is a welcoming sign of a second wave of investment that will come to the country. In fact, with AEC, Cambodia will be a gateway not to 15 million people, but listen this, 600 million people. And geographically, as you can see, that they are right in the subcontinental Greater Mekong sub-region between two major markets, Vietnam and Thailand. So there's a huge market there that Cambodia can conquer. And with the bridge over the Mekong now, they are part of a greater supply chain. The major fear of the Cambodian economy over the long term is a rival trade bloc, in particular the TPP or Trans-Pacific Partnership with the likes of the US, Vietnam, Malaysia and Singapore. But not Cambodia, Thailand, Laos or China. There you go. Anyway, from AEC, we move on to intertrade between South Korea, China and Japan. So trade trumps hostility for the East Asia Summit. South Korea, China and Japan hold their first leadership summit in more than 3 years when it first started on Sunday, marking a victory for political and in particularly economic pragmatism over historical antipathy and territorial rivalry. The trilateral gathering resumes what was originally an annual process until tensions between Northeast Asia three largest economies in 2012 triggered a lengthy hiatus. China hopes that the meeting will be an opportunity for the three countries to review the past and find ways of their difficulties. This is, of course, said by the Chinese Foreign Minister Huang Chunying. The focus will be very much on economic cooperation, with China especially keen to boost trade links as it seeks to inject some fresh momentum into its slowing economy. Also high on the agenda will be how to deal with North Korea, whose nuclear weapons ambitions pose a worry and definitely threats to all three countries, including China, which the North's main diplomatic protector and economic benefactor. We will take another short break. When we return, we discuss on the arts and culture side of Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hi, welcome back. This is ASEAN Daily and we are at the arts and culture side of Southeast Asia. So when we talk about graveyard, seldom we talk about celebration. Usually we just think about sorrowfulness and sadness. But Philippines' annual graveyard gathering is mixing celebration with sadness. Millions of people in the Philippines are making their annual pilgrimage to family grave sites on Sunday in a tradition that combines fervent Catholic faith with the country's penchant for festivity. The overwhelmingly Catholic Philippine has long celebrated All Saints' Day on November 1st as an occasion to gather at the graves of loved ones to light candles and pray for their souls, while many people in the Manila sprawling cemeteries treated the event like a giant picnic. In the central city of Tacloban, which is still suffering the devastation of Super Typhoon Haiyan, the mood was mournful and somber. In the aftermath of the disaster, with piles of bodies lining the streets and funeral parlors destroyed, Tacloban authorities resorted to burying the dead together. And moving on to another side of arts and culture, this time Star Wars spacecraft landed at Changi Airport. The X-Wing and TIE fighter from the popular sci-fi film series Star Wars will be landing at Changi Airport on November 12th, while the displays will be up at the airport until January 5th. A one-off launch parade will be held at November 12th to mark the aircraft's unveiling. Fans can expect to see Imperial Stormtroopers as well as Starfighter X-Wing pilots face off in a show at Terminal 3. That day on 11:30 a.m. onwards. The displays are a lead up to the release of the highly anticipated movie Star Wars: The Force Awakens, the seventh installment in the hit film series that will open in cinema worldwide on December 17. That's all from our news today. Thanks for listening to Durian ASEAN. And of course, you can always catch us on the go via your mobile by downloading our Durian ASEAN app, or listen to our podcast on YouTube at Durian ASEAN and Durian ASEAN TV. Don't forget to communicate with us and check out the latest news from our social media at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Have a great Monday and a great week. This is Arlene signing off. Thank you.